Welcome to Meet the Candidate. My guest for this session is Lori Kinnear, who is currently serving on and is running for re-election to the City of Spokane, Spokane City Council,
Correct.
District 2, Position 1.
Correct.
Okay, welcome today.
Thank you.
My little list of questions starts with the real simple stuff. Where did you grow up and go to school as a kid?
And that's a good question to start with. I'm a fourth-generation Washingtonian, born in Seattle, and my parents moved to California, Palo Alto, when I was 3. So I grew up in
You didn't have a choice about that.
I did not have a choice. And the rest of the family stayed behind. So I went to college at University of Nevada, Reno, and after those 3 years, my husband and I decided to return to Seattle. And then Seattle, as we all know,
has changed.
Grew, more congestion. And so 20 years ago, we moved here. My husband's family originated here. They immigrated in 1896 to Spokane. So we did full circle.
Yeah, but some long, deep roots there.
Yes, yes.
So in school, in your school years, what were some outside activities that you enjoyed that helped shape who you are?
Another good question. I majored in broadcast journalism, but before that, my family in California was very involved in the Scottish culture. And so at age 6, I started taking dance lessons, Scottish Highland dance lessons.
Oh, cool.
And I progressed through as a competitor, successful competitor, won some championships, and I decided to keep going. So I passed all my tests for teaching and then adjudicating. After I passed my adjudicating tests, then I was hired throughout the country and Canada. So I did a lot of traveling, judging dance contests, met a lot of people, and it really did shape who I became. And that performance venue that you're on stage, you're performing, you are pleasing people, it was very much a part of who I am. In addition, there's another very seldom talked about incident that we, both Ken and I did. We were at the University of Nevada, Reno. He was in a doctoral program, and the doctoral program was teaching American Sign Language to chimpanzees.
Oh, okay.
So I was married to him. I went along, and it was a fabulous opportunity that very few people on the planet would ever be able to say that they worked directly with chimpanzees. And the chimps were not in cages. They were treated as children in a 7-acre former divorce ranch in Reno, Nevada. And so they had the run of the place. The oldest chimpanzee, who was 4, did not like me, didn't like women, so I was not allowed to interact with her. I interacted with the other 2 who were smaller, not quite as strong. But it was quite an experience.
So you learned sign language as well?
Rudimentary. They were much better at it than I was. And they were smart, and they were clever, and they liked to tease me. And so, you know, taking guff from a chimpanzee is humbling.
So after you'd finished that and you came back to Seattle, what did you take on?
I got another degree in horticulture landscape design and started a small landscape design business. I had that for 8 years, and I was also working in advertising public relations because my degree was in broadcast journalism, and I just transitioned into advertising and public relations. And then we moved to Spokane, worked for some nonprofits, and then I ended up at the council office as an assistant for 7 years. And I realized, I know all this, I can do this too. I had 2 of my grandfathers who were state senators and a cousin who was a state senator. And so I think it's in my DNA as well.
I think those family stories do help shape our thoughts about what our own possibilities are.
And give you confidence that they could do it, so can I. And so one thing led to another, and I got involved in our neighborhood council and some of the issues that were happening back in 2005, 2006, and right around the time that we were having our Great Recession. cut back on police, property crime was an issue, and I'm thinking, we're not being as responsive as we could, or the council wasn't. So how do we go forward and involve citizens in some of the solutions? Because people were saying this has got to be mitigated somehow. Property crime was way off the charts. And so that was kind of the impetus for me to go forward and run for election.
Okay, well, I'm gonna back you up for a second and ask about a first job. Is there a first job besides the dance competition? Although that sounds really fascinating.
And I taught dance. I put myself through college for my first 2 years teaching dance and judging. And so that was my first job. And then I got a job at a radio station as a news anchor and a reporter in Reno. So I did that for two years. And that was when Reno was small and crime was rampant. So I remember breaking a story about a police officer who was undercover found in the desert.
Oh.
And I was young and I was horrified, but I had to suck it up and report it. And some of the things that were going on back then were, what happens now pales by comparison, quite frankly. So it was an eye-opener for me. And I decided at that point, I don't want to be awakened at 4 in the morning to go cover a fire. It's time to go into advertising, public
Something
relations.
a little more stable. Or
Yes, yes.
Well, I can see, but that would certainly give you a view at all sides of society there.
It did.
It did.
And Reno was pretty gritty. This was back in the late 70s. It was pretty gritty, and it was kind of hard scrabble, cowboy town still. And you look at Las Vegas and you think, oh, glitter, Reno, not so much. It's changed a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that you could have provide some insight into is what are the duties of a city council person?
Yes.
And so if you could take a little bit to describe some of those.
Yes. And I think people sometimes get confused about what we actually do. People say, what do you do? And we're responsible for sponsoring legislation and passing legislation. So that's a primary duty. We're also responsible for passing a budget. So we need to know all the nuances of where the money comes from and what departments it needs to go to. And then the third thing is advocating for our citizens, our district. Some people are confused about, do we actually supervise staff? We do not. The mayor supervises, hires, fires, and directs staff. So why don't you fill those potholes? Well, because that is the mayor's directive to staff.
As the executive branch.
Exactly. And we have a separation of powers. We will fund that activity, but the mayor is responsible for actually directing staff to do that. And some of the other nuances around just engaging citizens. So we have our neighbors and our neighborhood councils are advocating for an issue. So we're responsible for bringing that forward to council and including council in the part of the dialogue as well. So a neighborhood might be upset about an issue in my district, for example. So I inform the rest of the council, how can we go forward, help solve this problem, but not exclusively about that particular group. Let's create a solution that works for as many people as possible. So we're not really working on special interests, but is it a more global solution we can come up with?
Well, I'll give you the last minute or so here for your direct pitch of, and you might also describe a little bit about exactly where your district is, because people don't all know where the council districts are. So why should the people of District 2 re-elect you to Spokane City Council?
And District 2 is everything south of the river, primarily Peaceful Valley, Browns Addition, and downtown. When you think of downtown, that's a big area and a lot of diverse issues going on there. I have the experience. I've been in the council office for 7 years, and then as elected official for 3.5. I'm able to build consensus, which is critical when you're working with legislation with citizens, not just with council and getting everybody on board to pass what you want to see passed, but citizens. So the process of involving people in part of the decision making is critical. And I think as citizens and as electeds, we really need to be listening to people. What are their concerns? And I bring that to the table as well.
Okay, well, Lori Kinnear,
thank you
so for coming
much.
tonight.
I appreciate your time.
Very nice chatting with you.
Thank you.